the Victory Studios in downtown Little Rock, this is Capitol View.
Well, good morning and welcome to Capitol View. I'm Roby Brock. From impeachment in Washington, D.C. to suspensions in Little Rock, it was a wild week in Arkansas politics. We'll be joined by political pundits Sylvester Smith and Michael Cook to discuss the news of the week. We'll also dive into those topics as well as health care and tourism policy with State Senator Missy Irvin, chair of the Public Health Committee. Let's recap what happened. This week, the House GOP on Wednesday formalized its impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden with a House vote, a step Republicans hope will add legal weight to their demands as the probe moves into a more aggressive end stage. Lawmakers voted 221 to 212 along party lines to approve the resolution authorizing the inquiry. All four of Arkansas's Republican congressmen voted for the impeachment inquiry. The Arkansas Board of Corrections voted to suspend the Secretary of Corrections. That decision was made during an emergency meeting on Thursday. It comes after a back and forth between the board and Governor Sarah Sanders. Last month, she criticized the Board of Corrections for only adding 130 prison beds when she requested at least 600. Corrections Secretary Joe Porfiry reportedly started adding the requested beds this week anyway, despite the board's objections. The board also says he failed to provide the information needed for the board to ever consider the full request for additional beds, and in some cases transferred inmates before getting approval from the board. Well, Arkansas needs more doctors, but there haven't been enough residency positions for new medical school graduates in the past 3 years. That's according to a study by the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement. The Arkansas Center for Health Improvement study released Wednesday found that the gap hit its high point in 2021 when there were only 309 residency positions for 431 medical school graduates. The gap has narrowed somewhat since. In 2023, there were 356 residency positions for 401 graduates. We'll talk about all of these subjects with our guest on today's program. State Senator Missy Irvin, chair of the Senate Public Health Committee, is with us, and we'll be joined by Democratic political consultant Michael Cook, Republican political strategist Sylvester Smith. Stay with us.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
All right, joining me now, State Senator Missy Irvin, Republican of Mountain View. Always good to see you. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I know, always. So you live in a part of the state where there's been just a tad of controversy over the last couple of months where the Buffalo River moves through. There's been talks about perhaps turning it into a national park designation. It seems to be waning at this point. I feel like that there's been some pushback. What do you think happens next?
Well, there was a lot of pushback, and I think it's just about being respectful to the people that live there, you know, and understanding their cultural, their heritage, and their history with the Buffalo River. You know, a lot of these families homesteaded that area, and back when the Buffalo National River was designated, their land was taken away from them. It was a very tough time for many of those people, and that still lingers, and those wounds are very deep. And so, unfortunately, that dropped out of the sky through a poll that was done, just really kind of ripped those wounds back open, unfortunately. And, you know, these folks have a mistrust of government, but for a reason. There were promises made back whenever the Buffalo National River became a national river of economic prosperity that never really came to fruition. And so Searcy County, Newton County, they're really two of the poorest counties in the state of Arkansas. They desperately need infrastructure and investment into the area by both the federal government and the state government, but we don't need a change in land designation that would perhaps limit what we already have.
Tell me a little bit about what you think that change in designation might be, a national river designation versus a national park designation. What would that difference be?
Well, actually, there's just a lot of speculation about it. Until there's something written on paper from Congress, federal Congress, then you really can't speculate about what that is until it's written on the paper.
Yeah, it's a Herculean move to make something happen like that. And it's not going to happen instantly.
No, and I don't know why we would want to give up our national river designation, because we were the very first national river. And at some point, we might be the only national river designation. And so my challenge, you know, to our federal delegation is, you know, increase the appropriations to where we can actually fix the roads, fix the erosion issues, address putting in more bathrooms, different things like that. in my opinion, you do not need to change the land designation. With that might come permitting and all these other things and restrictions that the people there just don't want. And I don't think the people of Arkansas want it either. I've heard from so many people from all across the state of Arkansas that did not support or do not support that land designation change. So we do need increased infrastructure funding for the roads and for access to the river, but we don't want limits on fishing, limits on hunting, limits on hiking or swimming or kayaking or canoeing. You know, we want it to remain a free-flowing river, but we want it to be open to everybody at any time of the year.
Last question for you on this subject. Do you anticipate that you as a state senator might file something at the state level to try to put some sort of barrier up to make sure that there is a process that it has to clear to make it a little bit more difficult to change that designation, whether either in the fiscal session or in the next regular?
I've told my constituents I'm standing with them. My constituents have spoken very loudly and very, very clearly, and I'm proud of them. I'm proud that they have really exercised their voice, and I stand with them. So whatever it takes to make sure that their voice is respected and recognized in the process, absolutely. And furthermore, you know, we have the Buffalo River Conservation Committee. That has been a grassroots organization basically that has put in all of this time and effort and have been very effective at spending the $1 million that Governor Hutchinson gave to the Buffalo River Conservation Committee, but it's been with grassroots support and 100% unanimous support in any of the spending projects that we've done. And we're talking about water and wastewater infrastructure replacement, which we desperately need. When you all of a sudden see Craigsville Head, the points out there in the hiking trails on social media, the social media has driven so many tourists to the area, and so sometimes that's really straining on the infrastructure at your local city parks and things like that.
All right, you chaired the Public Health Committee in the Arkansas State Senate. There was a report that came out this week that shows what we have already known, that there is a doctor shortage in Arkansas. In some respects, because we have a residency problem in Arkansas, we don't have a place to put all the medical students, therefore they leave the state to go find residence slots, and they don't necessarily come back. What can we do as a state to address that?
Well, the state could put more money toward workforce development for physicians. We desperately need physicians all across the state of Arkansas. I think there are...
Are you talking about like paying for their med school? Or
I'm
what?
talking about opening up residency slots.
Gotcha.
Because you have right now medical students that are graduating from your DO school in doctorate of osteopathic schools in Jonesboro, Fort Smith, and UAMS. Alice Walton is opening up a 4th medical school in the state of Arkansas. All of those graduates from medical school need a residency to go to.
That's a federal permitting process. I've looked into how that
Medicare
process
pays,
works for residency slots, and I think it's Congress has to do something, don't they?
Well, Congress and the state can.
Okay.
So Congress, through Medicare, funds those residency spots. But states have stepped up, hospitals themselves have stepped up to fund residency programs because we desperately need more residents to train here in the state. 57% of the residents that train in that area remain in the area where they train.
Yeah.
And that's a high statistic.
Yeah.
And we want to retain the students that we're educating in the state of Arkansas. We need to grow that workforce. We need to make sure that we are placing them all across the state of Arkansas. I think there are 6 counties right now in the state of Arkansas that only have 1 full-time primary care physician. Those folks are on call 24/7. Whether there's a hospital there or not, that's a lot to ask for a person, you know, with their family and everything to be on call 24/7. Yeah. So we've got to have backup, and we also have to replace the doctors that are retiring.
Yeah, there is also the generational gap there.
There
is. Look at the retirement demographics there.
So I'm calling on the Secretary of Commerce to really put this at the top priority of his list. This is a workforce development issue, and we've got to have, you know, more residencies in the state of Arkansas. We as a state put $10 million towards new residency programs in Northwest Arkansas, but that's going to affect, I think, and help the entire state. I was very supportive of that, working with UAMS and also working with Washington Regional Medical Center up in Northwest Arkansas. We need to continue that work and just really increase. The Northwest Council has done a great amount of study on on the lack of shortages of physicians and all healthcare professionals in that area. So it's going to be amplified across the state.
And so to give proper credit, the statistics that I mentioned earlier where we got that was Arkansas Center for Health Improvement,
Yes.
Dr. Joe Thompson's group over there doing great work on that.
They are.
Do you anticipate, again, in the fiscal session, you could push for more money for this residency program from the state? Do you
Yes.
think that that will be something that'll get debated?
I think we've got to make sure that the money that we've already put towards workforce development, if it's not being utilized properly, then let's reshift what we already have. So let's be more effective with what we've already spending. If we need more, then absolutely, I would support more funding for residency programs in the state.
Might reduce those tax cuts a little bit if you got to put some
Well,
money towards
you know, you've got to
residency
make it
slots.
all work. And I'm just, you know, people need access to good quality health care, no matter where they are in the state of Arkansas, especially rural Arkansans. We've got to make sure our rural residency programs are thriving. Dr. Patterson at UAMS has done a great job of revitalizing that. I do know a little bit about that.
You do.
It
Your
works.
husband's a physician, so
It
yeah.
works. Rural residency programs do work because you train the physician there. We've got great public schools in many of these areas of rural Arkansas, especially my district. And so people see that it's a fabulous quality of life. It's a great public school to put your kids in. It's a great community to live in, and it's a great place to practice medicine. Yeah. And so if you train them there, they get exposed to that, and they're going to stay there and practice. And that's what we need.
All right, Senator Missy Irvin, good to be with you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining me.
All right.
Thanks for your insight on this.
Thanks.
All right, we're back with more right after this.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Time now for a friendly conversation about some non-controversial political issues. Joining me, Republican strategist Sylvester Smith, Democratic strategist Michael Cook. Good to see both of y'all. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
It's always friendly, but I can't remember it being non-controversial.
All right, I want to begin with Republicans in Congress this week voted to start an impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. My question to you, Michael Cook, first is, what are we impeaching the president on?
That's exactly the question that nobody can answer. There's been no evidence of any wrongdoing by President Joe Biden. Now, it's clear his son Hunter Biden has been doing some pretty unethical, sometimes illegal things, but Hunter Biden's not running for president. He's not an elected official. That's a separate issue. The problem is the Republicans have got on this crazy train and they just can't get off of it. The right-wing echo chamber is demanding that they impeach Joe Biden. The problem they don't realize, though, the past two times there have been impeachments with Bill Clinton and Donald Trump, regardless of what you think about the evidence in both cases, in both instances, their political bases rallied to them. Yeah. So what I think is going to happen, he's not going to be convicted, of course, he's not, but he's going to bring Democrats back home that are kind of waffling and make Joe Biden stronger in the end. I don't think Republicans have thought it through.
All right, Sylvester, your take. What are we impeaching him on, number one, and do you agree or disagree with that analysis?
Well, I'm not going to say that the Biden presidency has been without flaws. There's an old saying we have here in the South, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And there's no question when it comes to Hunter Biden, the fruit is rotten. That said, I was against impeachment when it came to Donald Trump. I'm against impeachment unless there are identifiable, clearly articulable points where we can demonstrate that the law was broken by a president. The process should not have been weaponized for Trump. It should not be weaponized now for Biden. And just like with Trump, we're going to find that this will benefit Biden in his presidency. I believe it's a strategic mistake.
Yeah. Kind of folding into that, we look like we're heading for a Trump versus Biden rematch, at least at this point in the end of the year. Who knows what happens after the first of the year right here. Does this help buoy support for Donald Trump and Joe Biden in your estimation?
I don't believe it does. I don't believe there's any benefit to Trump. One of Trump's best arguments is, I am a victim of the conspiracy machine. Well, when you indict Joe Biden, because that's what this whole process is, then you allow him to use that same language to say, well, maybe this process isn't as flawed as Mr. Trump says, because now I've been impeached too. So I just see no benefit to Republicans.
Yeah, all right. You see benefit to Joe Biden on this.
No,
What do you
definitely.
see as the benefit or dangers for Republicans?
They're making, like I said before, I hate to make the same point, but they're going to make Joe Biden stronger. They're going to rally. They're going to help bring Democrats home. But again, they're on the crazy train and they just can't get off of it.
All right. Let's switch to the state of Arkansas, where we have a corrections controversy brewing. Heck, who knows? It might lead to impeachment of someone at some point. I've heard that rumor actually floated around. For people that have not been paying super close attention, the Board of Corrections, which has some independent authority, has decided to suspend the Board of Corrections secretary, which is a Sarah Huckabee Sanders nominee. It had to be confirmed by the board. My question is kind of, and I'm not asking this for you guys to decide, but I think the legal question is going to be, who has the right to fire this person? Does the governor have the right to fire the person, or does the board have the right to fire the person? I think that's one of the things we'll find out. But just in general, what do you think of the controversy as a whole? Give me kind of your perspective of what you see swirling.
Well, first of all, and just a reminder for your viewers, I worked in the governor's office and served under Sarah's father. I respect the governor's desire to keep Arkansans safe.
Yeah.
I believe more prison beds is a necessary part of that process. However, I think it's important to delegate the details to the people who have the ultimate responsibility for running the institution, and literally that's the Board of Corrections here. And so I can understand their need to make sure that they have the adequate staff, they have the adequate facilities to not just keep inmates safe, but to also keep their staff safe.
Yeah.
I hate that this boiled over to the point where we're in court and you've got good conservatives on both sides aiming the weapon of litigation at each other. I believe the board should have taken more responsibility in trying to go and meet with the governor to try to reconcile this before they filed a lawsuit against her. Ultimately, we all lose when we start fighting with each other, and that's the thing that disappoints me.
This is a lawyer saying this. I mean, come on, you know. Sylvester makes a good point there. The board did not go consult with the governor. The governor originally did not consult with the board. I mean, I think there was about a 1 hour notice or something before when the first plan was kind of introduced and the board said we need more information. Maybe speak to a little bit of how different this is from what we have traditionally seen in governors and boards and how they typically navigate with each other.
Right.
So.
Well, with Governor Sarah Sanders, she cares more about grandstanding rather than governing. This whole process from the very beginning, the governor could have brought everybody into a room, let's argue it out, you know, have the fight behind closed doors. We need more prison beds. You know, both sides do have some good points to make. There is a need for more prison beds to make sure violent criminals are kept behind bars. At the same time, the Board of Corrections is also correct, is that we have to do it correctly and safely, both for the staff and the prisoners. Both sides could have come together and hashed it out behind closed doors, but Sarah Sanders loves to grandstand. That's why she had that press conference and tried to berate the Board of Corrections. And now this governor has always been, the two words that always come to mind is chaos and grandstanding. And this whole controversy is just another example of how the governor operates. And instead of governing, just get on the news, create controversy instead of solving the problem.
Michael is off the Christmas card list for the governor's mansion. I'm pretty sure about that. So defend the governor's actions in this in terms of she does have the right to use the bully pulpit of the governor's office to say, this is what I want done. But traditionally, we have seen more I call it skull knocking. You get people behind the door and you knock their skulls together and you fashion a solution. Why is that not her approach?
Well, we don't know that it wasn't her approach. You know, Mr. Cook's presumption is that she didn't call the chairman in, or that she didn't send a message to the chairman about what her needs were and how her plan to meet them. I think that's a flawed presumption. This governor is not about grandstanding. She's about keeping people safe. And prison beds are a necessary tool to do that. Now, that said, let me make this prediction as an attorney. Judge Patty James, who has this case, very commonsensical, let's look at the text and see what it says. The Board of Corrections has sued, saying Amendment 33 gives us ultimate dominion and authority over the prison system, and it says our powers shall not be delegated or transferred. The governor is relying on a statute that delegated their authority to her to hire and fire the secretary. I believe ultimately she's going to lose this litigation.
The Constitution is going to over
I think the Constitution
recently
always
passed
prevails.
statute.
And I've been on the wrong end of that. When I wrote a statute, the judge said it was unconstitutional. So,
all right. So, what would you political advice you would give to, let's start with Democrats, on how to capitalize on this issue, if there is a way to capitalize on this issue? Is there a way to turn this into a campaign issue in this next year's elections? I don't want a Republican defense of this.
You know, in terms of this one issue alone, it is very in the weeds, very inside baseball in terms of Amendment 33 and Board of Corrections and who gets to hire and fire the secretary. So you can't make this one thing a campaign issue. You can, however, loop it into or make it part of that overall story, is that Republicans can't govern and they overreach time and time again. And this is another example of Governor Sanders' chaos administration.
He's laid out his Democratic strategy there, Sylvester. You're on the other side. You get to combat it.
Our strategy is real simple. We want to keep Arkansans safe, and we may have some disagreements about how best to do that, but we're willing to do what it takes to keep our people safe. And I believe that's the message Arkansans will respond positively to, as they have for the past decade.
All right, we got about 30 seconds left. Do Republicans keep their supermajority in the legislature after next election?
Our supermajority may be a little less super, but we'll still have a supermajority.
I think Democrats are going to pick up a few seats in the House. Which ones, not sure yet, but I think we'll have a good year.
All right. Sylvester Smith, Michael Cook, thank you both for being with us. I very much appreciate you. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, everything in between. Happy
Same to you.
All of that stuff. And happy birthday, because my birthday's in that territory as well. Thank y'all for being here.
Thank you.
Right. We're back to wrap up right after this.
You're watching Capitol View, Sunday morning talk focused on the political scene in Arkansas.
Well, that is all for today's program. As always, thank you for joining us. I'm Roby Brock. You can get more information on talkbusiness.net or go to kark.com/Capitol View. I'll be back here next week offering you a Capitol View of politics in Arkansas. Until then, take care.